the Fulton campus office is closed because of we can't maintain social distancing. The office is too small.
All right, and then you can register online, online voter registration. You can go to our website, and our website address is nashville.gov/vote. The state website is tn.gov/vote. So those are two really good websites. So you can go to our website and look at the applications and go that way.
Right. I'm sharing my screen right now, and you can see that I'm at that website right there. So you can see what that looks like. And there is a lot of information on there. So one question I have is that what is the difference between registering online through the online voter registration and registering in person? So many students did register when you guys actually came out to Hume Fogg. Right. Does that make a difference? And if so, what is the difference in actually registering in person and registering online?
Yes, it does make a difference if you are requesting an absentee ballot. And if you have registered online and you are requesting an absentee ballot, there's ways that we can get around that. If a student is, say, going to school in Knoxville, and they're going to be home at any time where they can come to our office, they can actually come to our office and change that registration from an online to an in-person. They can also go to the county election office in Knox County and have that changed as well. So there's different ways to do that, even if they did register online and are requesting an absentee ballot.
So bottom line, if you register online, state law currently requires you to vote in person the first time. So if you're wanting to vote an absentee ballot, we need to work between now and the end of the absentee balance period to switch your voter registration over to an in-person application. But we can do that pretty quickly if you just come down to our office.
Wonderful. Okay, great. So I am registered to vote. And so I'm getting ready to go vote, and I'm going to go vote in person. So what ID do I need to actually take? Can I use to actually go and vote for that first time in person?
The only ID that you need, and this is an ID for every time that you vote, is a Tennessee or federal photo ID.
Driver's license.
Right. So usually kids use their driver's license or permit for that. But what I do have many students that are actually like, don't get their driver's licenses at 16 anymore. So what can they do to get a proper ID to vote?
You can go to the Department of Safety, and they will issue you just an ID. It's not a driver's license, but it's an ID that will allow you to vote, or your passport.
Right.
If they have a job, maybe with the federal government, they could use their federal ID. If they join the military, their military ID would work. So
yeah, but it's important to note, kids, students, your student ID from high school or college does not count. I realize in other states it does count, but it does not count in Tennessee. So don't take your UTK student ID. And I actually ran when I was getting ready to vote in the mayoral election last year. I ran into one of my students who had brought her student ID and not her driver's license to vote. And so I was like, well, yep, that's true. You cannot vote with your student ID. So Yep. So, okay. So, important to note there, I think from there is that now if I registered with you guys when y'all came out, I can vote absentee the first time. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it's only that first time. And once you vote for the first time, then you can, even if you registered online, if you vote in person the first time, then you can request an absentee ballot. It's not every time, just the first time you vote.
Okay. So, because of COVID-19 and secondly, I have a lot of kids who are going to be off in college, so they need to absentee vote anyway. What does that whole process look like? So what's the process for actually going through and actually completing my vote absentee?
You've made it so easy for us, Amanda, because you have our site pulled up. And the very first item underneath the information says absentee vote by mail request.
That's right. Okay. So this is you
2020 election.
Now, important to know, because people get this confused, it's going to open it with something else here, and I'm probably going to have to switch my screen here. But yeah, because it opens in Internet Explorer. But what's important to note on that is that that is not actually the ballot. That is the request for the ballot.
Correct.
Right? So how do I get that back to you? Or what are the ways I can get that back to you?
You can mail it back to us. You can email it back to us.
Fax it back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or drop it off in person.
Drop it off in person. Okay, so I see the email. And how do I know that you guys got it if I'm mailing it?
At the state website, you can go on the state website, put your voter information in, and it will give you that information. If you've requested an absentee ballot,
Okay.
it gives you that information. And if the county election office has received it, it gives you that information also.
Wonderful. Okay, so I request about, so kids, you need a stamp, okay, to do this. And like, if you haven't seen how to address an envelope, like there are lots of examples on that. And I say that, y'all think I'm crazy here, because I had to work with kids to address envelopes last year, and like they had not done it. So FYI, there's like tutorials out there. So you do have to, you would, knowing you kids, you're probably gonna be most comfortable emailing it in. What is the turnaround on that usually, as far as like requesting it and then getting it back? And then getting a ballot mailed?
Yes, our goal, and that we've been able to meet so far, which is great because we've gotten a lot of requests in for August, is the day that we get the paperwork to process that paperwork.
So the ballot would then go in the mail to the post office the next day.
Yes.
Okay, so I get my ballot and I fill it out, and then I have to put it back in the mail to you, or can I physically drop it off to you as well, or only mail?
Only mail.
Only
State law
mail.
requires
Okay.
just
And is that one stamp or two stamps on that?
one stamp. The post office has told us.
Okay, so
Okay.
one stamp. So when you mail it back in, kids, you do have to put a stamp on it again. So you're going to need to put a stamp on that. Okay, so this is, yeah, my story on this is my daughter was voting absentee. And so like I made sure, like I gave her a, like stamps to use specifically for absentee voting during her college career. So kids, ask your parents for some stamps. Okay, so I send it into you. I send my absentee ballot into you. What happens with it? And I still can track it through the state website. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It will tell you that we've received your ballot.
Okay. And then, like, so at that point, it gets you, how do you know it's me who filled it out and that like someone didn't go around and like randomly pick up like my absentee ballot or something? I don't know why that I wouldn't know that, but how do you verify that I actually filled that out?
Well, in Tennessee, unlike other states, First, you're going to sign your request for an absentee ballot.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to compare your demographics to what we have on file, and we're going to compare your signature. So your mom can't fill out your request for you because we're going to call and say, this doesn't look like you, your signature. We will do the same thing when you send your ballot in. You will sign under the penalty of perjury that this is you. And we will compare that against our signature on file. So I'm not going to say it can't be done, but we're checking to make sure it is you.
Okay, so along with that, let's say I am like I have a crazy signature, like my signature, it looks like chicken scratch. I just being absolutely honest with you. So let's say you reject my signature, but I like legit, I signed it. Okay, will I know that you rejected it?
You will know if we reject your request, we're going to contact you and say, we can't process your request because it doesn't look like your signature.
Okay.
Let me try to correct that.
Okay. And then how would I correct it? I would sign again, or I'd come down in person, or how would that work?
You could come in person, you could sign again. And keep in mind, we have multiple signatures from you,
Right.
most likely on file.
Right.
So
Okay.
if your signatures changed over time, we can go back and look just to see, if something's happened. You could have broken your arm and no longer signed it the way you used to.
Exactly. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So, okay. So I have to go through this process to send it in. And so I really want to encourage everyone in our audience to go and vote for August, because it makes it so much easier once you voted in person, or go by the election commission to in person, although many of y'all registered at school, but if you registered online, make sure you do the in-person thing. And honestly, I'm a big believer in voting in every election anyway. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to figure out who your candidates are as far as that goes. I really love, there is an app called Go Vote TN, and I really super love that app because what I do is I just I sign into it. It's not really a signing in, you literally sign in with your zip code and your first and last name, and it tells you it tells you who your what the candidate list is. So for August, it is a primary, which means you guys are voting in. You will pick the Republican or Democratic primary, but there's general election stuff as well. So one of the things that's really important is to be informed voters. So there are voter guides out. So the Equity Alliance puts out one, and I will see if my high school Dems and Republicans will put out one. As far as in some cases, you are choosing between more than one candidate. So for example, in the school board, that's everyone who lives in Bellevue. You're voting for a school board candidate. And there's 2 people up for that. And if you're voting in the Republican primary for Senate, there are kind of 2 main people running for that, but there's a lot of people on the list. So just being informed is, a really good way to do that. So really look at that Equity Alliance. It'll have a guide. Look at, who the candidates are. Definitely explore what they've done as far as their websites and stuff. A lot of times in Tennessee, it'll put out a guide too that's just literally how candidates have answered questions, and you can help yourself there. But I also want to remind people that if you go in and you're determined, you're here, I know who I want to be school board, but I don't know anything about these other offices, you can just vote for school board. It's important that you go. It's important that you have your voice, But if there's like a situation where there's a lot of candidates and you feel uncomfortable voting for an office, like you don't have to vote for every single office. So want to make that clear to people. Okay, so last question. Last one of my general questions. You go off to college and you didn't do the absentee voting thing, or you don't get your absentee ballot in time. Like, what are some of your options here, or what are some of the common questions you get from kids who are off in college? What could they have done better, and like what sort of problems do you notice with college kids a lot?
The main one that we had back when I worked in the absentee department was if a student had registered either online or by mail and they went to another state for college. Then that was the biggest issue, because they couldn't go to their county election office to make that registration in person. So for those that are going to other states for college, they need to make sure if they registered online that they have come to our office to change that registration to an in-person.
Okay, and then so another question I always get from kids, because we have a lot of kids who haven't turned 18 yet, or they're turning later. When
Right.
can you start checking that you are actually in the system? Like, how do I know if I'm in the system and quote registered? So they filled it out when y'all came, but that was like November, y'all came to Hume Fog, and I haven't even turned 18 yet. I turned 18 in July. So how do they know they're actually in your system?
When they turn 18, they can go on the state's website and do a voter lookup.
And prior to that time, you can call our office.
Yes.
And we will tell you, we've got you in the system in a hold position,
Right.
just waiting on your birthday.
And if you are going to turn 18 before the actual, before or on the actual day that you can vote, you can still vote early. That's
Yes.
correct?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
that is correct.
Okay, now let's say I actually do go to my polling place and they say, okay, we have a problem, like, here's your problem, and what sort of recourse do they take you through? So like, let's say they're like, you aren't on file, or whatever. What sort of recourse do people have?
You're going to vote a provisional ballot.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Be offered a provisional ballot. That gives us an opportunity to check into your situation the next day. And if everything works out, we would add your ballot to the overall count, because the results that are published the night of the election, those are unofficial.
Okay.
Your ballot would be added before the certified numbers are put together.
Wonderful. Okay. That is definitely good to know. Now, how are you guys preparing for what will likely be an influx of absentee ballots this year? Or so I'm assuming one good rule of thumb that I always tell kids is to send it in earlier rather than later as far as your ballot request. So just to remind you, you have to do a ballot request. Then they send you the ballot in the mail. So kids, if you are in college in Pennsylvania, like my daughter, if she waits to the last minute to do her ballot request, it could well be that she does not get the ballot in time. So, I mean, like, and then it's got to get there by mail. So like, you got mail going back and forth here, so don't wait till last minute. Request your absentee ballot early. And I will always post on Instagram about like requesting your absentee ballot. So if you follow on Instagram, make sure you really highlight that. Like in that class of 2020, like really be saying, hey guys, here's the request your absentee ballot now. Here's how you do it. Send that in. Make sure you have a stamp. So Ella, you can help me with that, my friend. But like, however you communicate that, it's really important. Don't wait till last minute. So how are you guys handling this kind of influx of absentee? And by the way, absentee ballot can be requested for you don't feel safe going out because of COVID-19, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, right now,
And the
we
judge who did that.
A little over 12,000 requests for absentee ballots. To give you some perspective, in August of 2016, we received 1,700.
Oh
So
my goodness.
A lot of people are taking advantage of an absentee ballot this time around. But we do ask that you send it in early so that we can meet our goal of trying to turn it around in 24 hours and get that ballot to you.
Right. Yeah.
And thank you for spreading that message. We appreciate that.
For sure, for sure. Okay, if you have a question, unmute yourself to ask. If there's something we haven't gone over, but that you have a question about, make sure you ask your question. I'm hoping we hit a lot of the highlights of common problems that people have, and we're trying to do everything we can to get the word out about, the process. But the more that we can do that in school, out of school, with friends, the better off that we all are. So if you have a question, unmute or put in I'm going to stop my share here. If you have put it in the chat or unmute yourself to ask a question if you have one.
Yeah, I had a question about the, like you mentioned that if you don't have an ID, you can go to the Department of Safety and get one. Like, how does that take a long time? Is it kind of like you have to do it really, really early if you need it, or can it be pushed closer to the deadline?
I don't know what the lines are at the Department of Safety right now. They have been known to be long, but because of COVID, they've relaxed some of the requirements as far as renewing your license and those kind of things. So they may not be as long right now as they might be if we move into another phase statewide. So the sooner the better if you're going to go to the Department of Safety. You might even give them a call and ask, how bad's the line today? Or what's the best day to come?
And Ella, you do have to take some proof with you. I've helped kids get their ID before, and the student I helped had to take her birth certificate, and she had to take she had to print out like a bank statement saying that was her ID. So one of the problems that college kids face is, it's a problem because, if you don't have a job, so you don't have a bank account, if you don't have your birth certificate, then it's hard to, you do have to take information for you to get that free ID. But if you do have that information, then when you get there, you say, hey, I'm just here to get my free voter ID. And what I heard is that they should put you up at the front of the line because you don't have to go through the driving thing. Yours is kind of separate. So that's what I've heard from the two kids I helped get their ID. Great question though.
Yeah, I had another one if I can just go ahead and ask that too.
Sure.
So when you vote, when you vote absentee, not like when you get the form, but once you have sent in your ballot, I might have just missed it, but how do you make sure that they get the ballot and that your vote is actually counted?
Well, when your ballot comes in, it's got a barcode on it, and we scan that barcode, and that gives you credit for voting in that election. It does not tell us how you voted, but it lets us know that you've returned a ballot. Those ballots then go into a locked box, and they are not counted until election day when a group of poll officials, both parties will come in and sit and count the ballots. Now, their biggest job is preparing the ballots to go into a scanner, but that's what they do. So they will actually open up the ballot envelope that you have sent us and retrieve the ballot and prepare it to be scanned.
But like, is there a way for them is there a way to know for sure that your ballot actually got into that locked box or whatever? Like, is there like
once it's scanned, if you will then be able to look it up on the state's website, and it will say ballot received or ballot returned.
Right.
And it'll give you a date when it was returned, so
Yes.
you'll know.
Yes.
Okay, everyone is muted right now except for us. So
that was my last question. I don't know if other people have questions. Ms. Smithfield, you're muted.
Hey, Ella, did you have another question?
No.
Okay, wonderful. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask about voting?
I do. This is Lauren.
Hey, Lauren.
Hi. So I voted in person in Davidson County a few years ago, but I've since moved to Wilson County. So I know you can absentee vote here too, and we have an election coming up too. So that one, if I choose to go in person, will that make it easier for me to absentee vote in the fall, or can I do absentee for both of them? I'm not sure if it changes anything since I've only voted in Davidson so far.
okay, you're going to have to register to vote in Williamson County.
I have.
Okay, all right. And did you register in person?
No, I think I just changed my address online.
Okay, you're changing your address online. Well, it's probably going to go in as a new registration for Williamson County. Have they sent you the little registration card?
I have no clue, to be honest. I looked it up on, I guess, tnmap.tn.gov, and it says I'm registered. I'm sorry?
And it said you were registered there?
Yes.
Okay.
So should I be good to go?
Yeah, you should be good to go. I would just give Williamson County a call and ask them if you can request an absentee ballot.
Okay.
That way you're ahead of the game.
All right.
Right. That is one thing I have, don't be afraid to call the wonderful people at whatever your election commission is, don't be afraid to call them and ask a question. I've had kids who've said, hey, I'm nervous, y'all didn't get the application, and don't be afraid to call, because you guys are so there to help everyone vote. And along with that, once you register and stuff, like I said, it's really important to know who are going to be the candidates in your area, because it's not just federal candidates, it's not just the presidential. You're voting for people who are from your area. So school board is just this Bellevue kind of West Nashville area. So that's why it's really important to know the candidates that you are selecting, which is why doing that whole candidate lookup thing is so helpful to do. So I'm going to send out a follow-up email this weekend with a link to this video, as well as those specific websites as far as how to do that. So but saying it, you tell everyone, make sure everyone is really clear. And when people post things that need to be corrected or not totally clear information, just make sure that you help people become informed on how to do that. So right now, y'all can really be pushing like registering to vote if you haven't, requesting an absentee ballot if you're not going to be voting in person, double checking, like answering that question, especially if there's students who've registered about like voting in person the first time, and like not being afraid to call the election commission if kids have a question. So those are all good things to do. All right, other questions we might have? All right, well, this was super helpful. I'm going to put in a follow-up email. I'm going to publish this online, this discussion. But thank you guys so much for Davidson County Election Commission. Thank you guys so much for being willing to like share your knowledge with us and make sure that people feel comfortable voting. We really appreciate y'all so much.
Well, thanks for helping us get the word out there.
All right, we'll do it. All right, you keep doing you. All right, thanks again. I'm going to end the meeting, guys, but if you have any questions, follow up with a call to the Davidson County or whatever your county's election commission is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amanda.